You've probably heard the saying that literature is a mirror of society, right? That it reflects our values, our fears, our conflicts. But what if we applied that exact same idea to the daily news? Well, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to see how a single newspaper, just a snapshot from one day in history, can unlock the story of an entire era. This quote is the perfect starting point for us. It gets us thinking about a newspaper not just as a list of facts, but as a story, a narrative that a society is telling about itself on one particular day. It's a really rich cultural document, and we're going to learn how to read between the lines and decode the clues it holds.
And here it is. This is our primary source, the Daily Pilot, a local paper from Orange County, California from Tuesday, September 27, 1977. I want you to think of this as a time capsule. We're going to open it up and by analyzing its pages, start to piece together a picture of American society from over 4 decades ago.
Now, to make sure our analysis is on the right track for your baccalaureate, we're going to use our AMC framework. We're working within Theme 1, Faire Société, and focusing on Axis 3, representing la société. So we're asking how a nonfiction text, like this newspaper, can act as a mirror of its time, just like a novel or a play would.
So that brings us to our big question for today. It's really twofold. First, how does this specific newspaper from 1977 represent American society? And second, just as important, what analytical tools can we use to really understand that representation? We're looking at both the what and the how.
All right, here's our game plan for tackling this. We're going to do a 3-part thematic analysis, looking first at conflict, then at inequalities, and finally at everyday values. And then we'll wrap it all up by talking about the best method for structuring this kind of analysis for your exam.
Okay, let's dive right into our first theme, a society of conflict. As you're about to see, this newspaper paints a picture of a world that is just full of tension at every single level, from global superpowers down to local communities.
Right off the bat, this headline just grabs you. It reveals the biggest global tension of the time, the Cold War. Nuclear tests suspended? Pay close attention to that question mark. That one little piece of punctuation says so much. It speaks to a world living with the constant nagging fear of nuclear war, where every negotiation was front-page news, just filled with uncertainty. But the conflict wasn't just some abstract thing happening far away. No, it felt very immediate, very local too. The evidence? This headline, right on the same front page. Killer bomb found. A pipe bomb was discovered in Irvine, California. This brings that theme of danger and violence right into a quiet suburb, showing a society that's also dealing with crime and insecurity right in its own backyard. And get this, the language of war was everywhere. It was even used to talk about public health problems. In Chicago, a local politician declared a great rat war, offering $1 a rat bounty. I mean, seriously, using military terms like war and bounty for a rat problem? It's fascinating because it shows how deep this conflict mindset was. It really reflects a broader American tendency to frame all sorts of social problems, from drugs to poverty, as wars that need to be fought. So, let's step back and organize what we found. The key takeaway here is that the newspaper represents conflict on 3 different levels. You've got the global level with the Cold War, you have the local level with violent crime, and you have the social level with these battles against urban decay. It's this layered picture that gives us such a rich understanding of American anxieties back in 1977. Okay, let's move on to our second big theme, a society of inequalities. If we look past the big dramatic headlines about conflict, we can start to see these deep social and economic cracks running through the society. Look at this number, just 57%. What in the world could that represent about American society in 1977? A single statistic like this is such a powerful hook, isn't it? It makes you stop and think, what's the story here? And here's the story. This 57% represents the gender pay gap. An article in the paper reports on a study showing that for every dollar a man earned in 1977, a woman in a similar job earned just 57 cents. Wow. That single stark fact is just incredibly powerful evidence of systemic gender inequality. And the paper also gives a voice to other marginalized groups. This quote is from an article about Vietnamese refugees who were trying to build a new life after the end of the Vietnam War. It really shines a light on the economic hardship and the huge challenges of integration they faced. It adds another important layer to our understanding of inequality and that key AMC concept of otherness. All right, for our third and final theme, let's look beyond the hard news. Let's try to understand the society's everyday values. You know, What did people do for fun? What did they want to buy? The sections on comics, entertainment, and especially the ads are absolute gold mines for this kind of analysis. You can see this really interesting cultural tug-of-war happening right here on the page. On one side, you've got a story about a huge moment in the Peanuts comic strip, this shared, innocent piece of pop culture. And then right next to it, you've got an ad that's all about money and getting higher interest rates. It's a perfect snapshot of a society caught between traditional forms of escapism and this powerful rise of consumerism. And this is one of my favorite parts, the classified ads. They give us such a real, tangible feel for the economy. A 2-bedroom apartment for $375 a month, a used car for $2,500. This kind of data makes history feel real. It lets us actually compare the economic world of 1977 to our own, and it gives real-world context to all the other articles.
So, we've gathered all this amazing evidence. But now for the most important part. How do we take all these observations and turn them into a structured, persuasive analysis that's going to impress your examiners? Let's talk methodology.
Here is a simple but super powerful recipe for building your paragraphs. Step 1. State your point. Make a clear claim. For example, the newspaper shows a society worried about local crime. Step 2. Find your evidence. Back it up with a specific detail. For example, as seen in the headline, killer bomb found. And finally, step 3. Give your explanation. This is where you explain how the evidence proves your point. This headline demonstrates that the fear of violence was not just an abstract concept. This point, example, explanation method is your key to success.
So to wrap up and answer our big question from the start, what does this newspaper represent? Well, it represents a really complex American society, one that's grappling with conflict on all fronts, one that's facing these deep systemic inequalities, and one that's trying to find a balance between its culture and the growing power of consumerism. It is, without a doubt, a fascinating first draft of history. And I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Imagine a historian 50 years from now, in 2077, analyzing a newspaper from today using these exact same methods. What conflicts, what inequalities, and what values would they find? What does our own first draft of history say about us right now?